Africa Link.
A stolen phone, a whispered accusation, a crowd gathers. In minutes, justice is decided, not in a courtroom, but on the street. Over the past decade, mob violence in Nigeria has surged, fueled by distrust in law enforcement, economic hardship, and the rapid spread of misinformation. From brutal lynchings to social media-driven outrage, vigilante justice is becoming a dangerous norm. But why is this happening? And what does it say about justice, fear, and power in modern Nigeria? That's what's coming up. Stay tuned. My name is Josephine Mahachi. Welcome to Africa Link, the podcast that connects you to the stories that matter from Africa.
Africa Link, every weekday here on DW.
In Nigeria, accusations, often unverified, can turn deadly in an instant. From petty theft to mistaken identity, mob violence has become a brutal form of street justice, with victims beaten, stoned, or even burned alive. Recently, 12 hunters traveling from Port Harcourt to Kano were lynched in Edo State on mere suspicion of being criminals. Their gruesome deaths have reignited debates on lawlessness, justice, and the failure of legal institutions. To explore the roots of this crisis and possible solutions, we are joined by Frank Tietie, a development lawyer and executive director of Citizens Advocacy for Social and Economic Rights, and our own DW correspondent in Abuja, Ben Adam Chemang. I'll start with you, Barrister Frank Tietie. First of all, let's get these terms right. What are mob actions and jungle justice?
Well, I think it's been a long time with us. The idea when government appears to be too far from the people, where law enforcement agents are seen to be restricted only to capital cities or the various states or in the nation's capital, people tend to have some form of, I don't want to call it self-governance, but the distant sense that government is far away and then they can do whatever they like. Actually, this has been happening after the Civil War, I would say. This sort of jungle justice, whenever there is breakdown of law and order, people always resort to one sort of makeshift justice. But the problem in this case is that for a long time, there is what we refer to as vigilante groups that have been set up, not necessarily in response to terrorism that has been ravaging the northeastern part of the country, but more it started as a response to armed robbery, because it's the state authorities, the police, and generally, including the law enforcement, but that's talking about the state, the secret service and rest, could not stem the tide of armed robbery. Communities, villages, and businesses started organizing private security to protect themselves. And now, without any cover of law, not supported by any law. Now, that's how we saw private persons organizing themselves to provide security, till the point these same private persons now began to, provide conflict resolution, dispute resolution mechanisms by solving problems between contending parties, whether over business, over land, even between husbands and wives in material disputes, marital disputes. So it's gradually so whenever there is no police presence in a place, these sort of people take over. That's the reason why many times this one was simply captured on video. That's the reason why it's gaining this kind of, attention. If not, there are several forms of extrajudicial killings in the form of jungle justice that happen across the country, in southern Nigeria, in other places. The terrorism and banditry, together with kidnapping, have just come to made it worse. And I can tell you that, in summary, that it's all as a result of the failure of the state to provide adequate policing. And this is what the alternative form of, security, provision of security has now cost Nigerians.
Right, right. But some would come and say that maybe the law is taking long, or the law is not doing what they want, or the law is like turning a blind eye, blind ear on their plights, rather, Barrister Frank Tete. But what does the law say against illegal killings, whether you're right or wrong?
Oh, no, you see, the Constitution is very clear about it. It guarantees under Section 33 the right to life, and that on no circumstances should the life of any Nigerian be taken except in accordance to the provision of the law with the pronouncement of the judgment of a court. So any form of taking of life against that provision of the Constitution is seen as murder, is seen in the criminal law books as pure homicide. It's a different matter if it is cold blood, whether it's cold blood or it's accidental. However, life in Nigeria is taken with so much sanctity that even when it happens by mistake, it seems to be non-intentional homicide. It will be referred to as a manslaughter, to which such a person who perpetrates it can even go to prison for as long as life imprisonment. So life here, according to the law books, is seen to be very, well protected, sacrosanct, and seen to be a very serious issue when tampered with without recourse to law. So in this case, these persons who have, orchestrated, not I wouldn't say orchestrated, who actually literally cold-bloodedly murdered these travelers as a result of something that they have they considered to be right. Now let me tell you why they did it without any restraint. The idea is that kidnapping has been ravaging that part of the country for a long time. The government has not responded to the stereotyping that these kidnappings have been have been carried out by certain persons, by certain tribes, and that have features, notable features. I mean, I'm talking about facial features or body features that can be easily identified. All this time that much of the news has been circulating among various southern states that these tribes coming from northern part of Nigeria are the ones who perpetrate kidnapping. And it's to a large extent true, because many of the persons who have been kidnapped, so when the victims of kidnapping, when they are eventually released after payment of ransom, they are able to describe these persons. They are able to refer to the languages that they speak, and so it's easy to stereotype some persons. Now that's the reason why when these persons were seen traveling from the north or to the north with farming equipment and hunting equipment like Dane guns, the summary conclusion was that they were kidnappers. What they could have done was to simply have them arrested or handed over to the police. But what they did was to simply administer jungle justice. And I must tell you quickly that the average, local Nigerian who is living far away from the police, the mentality is that matters that are taken to the police can be easily compromised when bribes are offered to the police, or when they are taken to court. Justice is never achieved because of undue delay. One criminal case can take as sometimes as long as 10 years before it is resolved. So they feel that justice that is delivered by themselves according to their own hands, according to their own persuasion, is the one they believe in. Unfortunately, this one was caught on video, and it is eliciting all of these reactions now, for which they must now be held accountable.
Right, right. Now, Barrister, before I go to our reporter there, Ben, I mean, you touched on something that some people have lost hope in the police in Nigeria. We've seen clips, we've seen videos on social media platforms where Nigerian police really taking bribe, and also many Nigerians saying Nigerian police is not your friend anymore. So do you agree that some of these things or some of these situations are the ones that are pushing Nigerians to take the law into their hands?
No, I think Nigerians may not have lost much hope in the police as much as they have lost hope in the fact that the government is unable to provide security. These are all offshoots of the, teetering, I would say, the long-drawn insecurity situation in Nigeria. Many Nigerians must be congratulated, or I would say commended, for their, resilience in the face of failure of the state to guarantee security. because we've been in this country, some of us have been in this country for over 5 decades. We have come to realize that things have just gone on a downward spiral because we've seen a state that has shown capacity. Even after the Civil War, that has been able to ensure that there was peace. You could travel to any part of the country, enjoy all the tourist destinations without the presence of any threat or the insecurity. Suddenly, slowly, everything has just gone this bad. And then what happens is that the government players appear to only be interested in the perks and the benefits of government. People see all these things, and the police has been left unattended to in terms of welfare. The police, over the years, gradually, developed this idea of making bribery and corruption as part of their, operations. Because you send a policeman to go on patrol, whereas you don't give them money to buy petrol into their pickup truck. They tell you plainly that give us money, we want to buy petrol. And then they stop you. They don't have anything against you, but they'll ask you for money. And then they say, well, they want to use the money to eat or whatever. So now, if you come to a typical Nigerian, a police checkpoint, they are all smiling and greeting you and then asking you for money. So it's not becoming a culture. Unfortunately, it's traceable to government failure. Now, we haven't seen that direct response of the government in addressing the issue of police welfare. But it has reached a point where Nigerians believe that no matter how much you give to the Nigerian policeman in terms of a good salary, because of the entrenched culture of bribery and corruption, they will still always want to take money. I've been advocating in recent times that perhaps we should put more pressure on the National Assembly, and let's see whether we can decentralize the police system so that we don't have a federal controlled police that has become this incompetent and highly corrupt as we find it in Nigeria. So the hope is that when we have the decentralized police system where various states, various local governments can organize proper professional police force, then we may have less of issues of jungle justice and extra judicial killings as we have had in Edo State.
Right. Now, I'll come back to you, Barrister. I have a lot of burning questions, and I can also sense, the disappointment in your voice as you're actually explaining these things. But Ben, as you are a reporter there in Nigeria, how frequent are cases of mob action in Nigeria, and what do you think really are the causes of these crimes, if there are any maybe different from what Barrister has said?
Yes, they are frequent because there are times you just go to some markets and you just hear the case of a theft matter, and the thief or the suspect rather will just be caught. Sometimes the one old tire on him, set the tire ablaze. Consequently, the man is set ablaze. The things are common. And just let me tell you a story, or I put it this way. There are instances in a crowded environment here in Abuja, here in Lagos, and many other big cities. Someone will just shout that, oh, this gentleman has touched me, and a body part of that person, the person alleging, has disappeared. Sometimes they even allege that, I'm sorry to use this word, that private parts have disappeared.
And that is
you see, it's not true scientifically, but somebody must die because of that kind of a very wrongful accusation. And there are instances, even in police stations, the case will reach there. You find people around the police station, they want to get that culprit out and even set him ablaze. Sometimes the police will stand their grounds, begin to shoot on this guy because they feel, like you said, why is it persistent? They feel that the police are not protecting them enough. Even the police themselves, how many are they to a population of over 200 million? They are not here and there. And sometimes when such people are caught and they are within the police net, even when it is a real big crime matter, you just see that they are set free, they are moving freely. The victim is feeling that there is not justice for him, there's not justice for society. And therefore, when next such a thing happens, Others will simply say, look, when this thing happened in a different place, there was no action by the police. So they therefore take the laws into their hand. These cases are very many, yes.
But you're saying that people are quick to take laws into their hands as opposed to involving security agents, because you say 200 million people against how many number of police in Nigeria. But how about taking the culprit to the police station? Are you saying that Nigerians find that hard as well, Ben?
Is their own believability in a system that sometimes they feel is not giving them the justice they want. Look at today, we're talking about kidnapping here and there. By the time they shouting, come to our aid, nobody goes to their aid. But if, however, it reaches the police, sometimes there could be action, but that action could be so delayed to the disappointment of the victim. And that's why this cliche, justice delayed is justice denied. They are waiting for justice. It's like waiting for the Last Supper. They feel truly disappointed.
Now, Barrister, to come back to you, there is something we talked about earlier before we turned to Ben, which is I mentioned a lot of video clips on social media platforms where we see police even taking bribe or even treating citizens wrongly, and you're always in the courts. Have you seen any policemen being taken to court for these type of crimes?
The system here does not encourage the prosecution of policemen. So, direct answer to your question is no. There is hardly a time a policeman has been taken to court to be prosecuted for bribery. However, the reason is that there is a body known as Police Service Commission that has the responsibility of disciplining police officers.
You know, it's so sad when you mentioned even that nobody knows what happens to these police, even the ones that discharge firearm accidentally on citizens. That is murder. To me, I don't know what they call it in the courts already, and I think it should be open for people to know what happens to these people. That is why sometimes I feel like Nigerians feel like taking this law into their hands is justified, because there's sort of like no law anymore in the country. When we see it from our own spectacles, Barrister, from afar, I mean, videos, pictures we see on social media platforms. But how effective are the laws in punishing culprits who involve themselves in these acts in Nigeria?
I am a lawyer. I practice. I go to court often, every week. Now, the challenge, therefore, is how much confidence do Nigerians have their legal system? Is there equality? When you ask me these questions, they are very probing. And because we are on international media, I feel very sad that I speak, in speaking the truth about my country, it shows that things are really bad. I wish I said the good part of my country to the international media. Unfortunately, things are not like that. You know, the truth is that the justice system also has its own problem. So if you just go to the social media talking about and type justice delivery in Nigeria, you will see another litany of sad stories bedeviling that sector.
Right. Now, Ben, if you can also, attest to what sensing here is Barrister is so angry and really narrating exactly what is happening in Nigeria with so much anger. But tensions are usually high, obviously, when things of this nature happen. How can these acts be stopped? If you can just narrate to us how it really happened, especially with the case of Uromi.
Yeah, you see, the case of Uromi was that you have these northerners who said they are hunters, but they left Kano State how many kilometers to Port Harcourt? And they were returning from Port Harcourt to go for this Salah break that just ended. And along Uromi, because of kidnapping incidents around the area, there's this civilian group that tend to provide security for their community. So doing a stop and search they realized that these people were carrying guns. And to them, there are also some video clips. They are showing some controlled guns. When you say controlled, AK-47, assault rifles. These are different from hunting guns. So that is a state control item. So that angered them so much.
Now, Barrister, as we wrap up our discussion, we round up with you. Are the laws detergent enough to curtail future occupancy like this Uromi case?
Well, you refer to whether the law as we have it in Nigeria is sufficient to
Yes.
prevent a reoccurrence.
Yes.
I must admit that you've asked the right questions all through today, including this one. But the questions are, tend to draw so much from us, and so look at it this way. It pains me to say no. The reason is that the laws, it's often said, and Ben can testify to this, that we are very boastful in our country to say that we have some of the best laws in the world because we copied them from the United Kingdom. Unfortunately, these laws must be operated by people. When the people have made up their mind to subvert these laws and make them ineffective and inefficient in every way they can, you'll find that you get the opposite of some of the best laws. You get the opposite result in operating some of the best laws in the world. That these laws have been in place. We have some of the finest criminal laws, finest, human rights laws in this world, I would say, and I can boast about that. Unfortunately, these laws have not prevented the current terrible situation in Nigeria right now. The reason is that because of our kind of politics. But we have hope. Our hope is that we're asking for new laws. We're asking for amendment of some of the laws. What law? For example, we want the constitution to be amended to give these various villages, these local governments, these state governments, the ability to organize proper police formations so that we don't have untrained persons, non-state actors acting. Now, the idea that you have a country that is over 200 million people, and you have one police force seated at the headquarters in Abuja to organize police service. It's very unworkable.
Wow. Barrister Frank Atite, a development lawyer and executive director of Citizens Advocacy for Social and Economic Rights. We can hear and feel the tension in your voice. We can feel the disappointment. Thank you so much for joining us here today on DW Africa Link podcast. And we just hope that things get better in Nigeria. And you also, as a barrister and a lawyer, you can continue to use your voice and ensure that at least the law, or maybe should I say the courts, are improved in Nigeria for even ordinary citizens who cannot even afford to hire a lawyer. I understand there's a time we had you again on this same podcast talking about a lot of youths that are languishing in prisons and they don't have any representation. And I feel like we'll have a second part with you. You come back again. We talk about now just the law and justice in Nigeria. But thank you so much for joining us here today, and also our correspondent in Abuja, Ben Adam Shiman.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Africa is changing. Don't get left behind. Tune in to Africa Link.
At the Africa Link podcast, we always look across the continent to see how the stories play out or even overlap. In South Africa, for example, mob justice occurs when people or groups feel more endangered as crime levels rise. It is exacerbated by growing assumptions that the authorities are unwilling or unable to suppress crime. Civilians' faith in the police is low, laying the foundation for the growth of mob justice. The frequency of mob attacks on suspects in South Africa is a great concern to justice stakeholders and South African communities. Did you know that social media has perpetuated the discourse of mob vengeance by creating viral content? Social media platforms enable public identification of suspects and provide graphic evidence of the punishments meted out. Such punishment aims to harm the suspect and guarantee that the wider public witnesses the punishment and does not repeat the crime. However, the suspect's family is left in anguish with a lifetime reminder of online social media schemes. Therefore, you need to watch out when you share graphic videos or pictures involving any form of violence. That's it for this edition of Africa Link. Remember, you are not just a listener, but a crucial part of our community, and your engagement can shape the direction of our discussions. We value your insights and encourage you to share your thoughts with us. You can find all of the Africa Link podcast episodes on Spotify and Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts from. This episode was co-produced and edited by Isaac Mugabi. My name is Josephine Mahachi. Thanks for listening. Until the next one, it's bye for now.